Welcome to the BumbleKast, everyone. I'm your host, Ian Flynn, the Bumble King, and joining me as my co-host, I choose you, Kyle!
Kyle!
There we go. Who's a good little Kyle?
Kyle.
So this show, we're going to be focusing on that hot commodity, Pokemon, kind of a small thing that's been going for, 20 years now?
Yeah, it's a little bit of an extended fad, I guess.
But before we get into that, we need to introduce our very first guest star, the very first person who made his way onto the show. Everyone, let's give a big hand to Andrew, the Diamond Death.
Woohoo! Hello,
Yay.
hello. I wanted to say hello, like the phone guy from Five Nights at Freddy's, but I don't remember how he says it.
I think you're pretty close.
Oh, okay.
From what I kind of remember, I have not seen much Five Nights at Freddy's, but I've watched.
Hopefully, people will get the reference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had the spine to make it through Five Nights at Freddy's, so it's lost on me.
I haven't either. But I had the spine to watch people play it.
Yeah. The commentary.
It's more entertaining that way.
Yeah, the commentary makes it a bit more. It makes it funny rather than scary.
I can't even do that. I can't even do that. I am Deweyne. I am the bratwurst of the smallest caliber.
You're Zavini.
So, Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is it that brought you to the BumbleKast?
Specifically to the BumbleKast, I had been following the Sonic comics since my first year in college, and I've been following you, Ian, and the Bumble King forums while it was still up. God rest its soul, and I just became a part of that community. And then when I found out you were doing a podcast, I started listening to it, and I like to listen to different podcasts while I'm doing my own personal work. And when I saw the Patreon and the opportunity to be on the show, I was like, wow, I'm going to jump on that as soon as I can. And lo and behold, here I am, jumping on it as soon as I could.
Welcome, sir. Glad to have you.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
And as far as a little bit about myself, I went to college for cartooning, that's specifically comics and illustration. Although it's been tough to get anything stable in the field, in the meantime, I am looking into being a full stack web developer. And in the meantime, I'm still going to be doing my artwork. I know Ian and now Kyle knows this, but I had hired Ian to do some work on my own personal project, which is a comic called Spirit Legends. And, trying to get that going. And, in the meantime, here I am, ready to partake in this Pokemon discussion. Couldn't think of a good word.
Pokemon phenomenon.
Yes, there we go. That's a good one. I was like, what's a good word to go along with Pokemon? And it just stumbled and I went, discussion.
That's okay. We stumble on words all the time.
No, we don't. We're perfectly fine. We don't edit out anything.
No, never.
We certainly didn't cut out the entire intro of the show because I flubbed it.
It's certainly not worth being a blooper after the show.
No, of course not. No, we never have any of those. What are you talking about?
There's the thought. So, Andrew, when did you choose to be a Pokemon master?
I was born a Pokemon master. I chose back when, I don't even know what year it was when it first came out and Red and Blue was going on. I didn't have a Game Boy at the time. Blasphemous! I know, but I had some friends who had it, and I was trying to get into the hype. I was watching the show back in, elementary school for me. I think it was 5th grade, and I was watching the show at 7 a.m., and I think Beast Wars went on after that, but that's besides the point. I got into the hype at the time. I never really grew out of it. At some point, I kind of stumbled out of it, and then got back into it thinking to myself, how the heck did I ever get out of this? And I've just been sticking with it ever since, and it's awesome.
What about you, Kyle? When did you start?
I have never really been a Pokemon guy.
That's it. Show's over.
Yep.
Show's over.
Might as well. You might as well. You might as well.
Goodbye, folks.
You
Goodbye,
might.
folks.
You might as well. Yeah, you might as well just shut it down now.
Shut her down.
No, honestly, I don't know. I understand the appeal, but it's one of those Nintendo franchises. It just never really grabbed me as much as, say, Mario. So, I was there, obviously. I was in middle school during the first big Pokemon boom. And it was absolutely enormous. And a lot of the kids were definitely into it. I never had a Game Boy.
Oh, so you're with me.
So that might have been part of it. And I never really got into the show either. So it's just like, it was kind of this thing that I knew people were into and I knew people liked it. And I understood why people liked it because there's definitely a collector itch with it. Mm-hmm. But it kind of passed me by, I suppose.
See, my brother and I, we both had Game Boys. So we got to do the whole connector cable, battle it out, trade Pokemon thing. And we actually got along, so we didn't do any of that nonsense where it's like, oh, I'm going to trade you this to evolve it. Oh, no, I can't trade it back. Ha ha. No, we actually supported each other through the various games. And I don't know, maybe that's why it's endeared me to it for so long, because I've always had someone to play it with. And that's a very large part of Pokemon.
I actually lied. I just remembered I did have a Game Boy, but I had lost it before Pokemon had even came out. So
yeah,
I don't know whatever happened to that thing.
I wanted to add to my thought. I eventually had a Game Boy. I don't want to say I never had a Game Boy. I eventually got a Game Boy Color for Christmas of whatever and got Pokemon Gold. So that was the first Pokemon game I played. And then eventually a friend of mine at the time gave me his red version, and I played that afterwards, which was pretty crazy because in Gold you go back to Kanto, which is the region from the first game. So from my perspective, I was traveling back in time and going back into Kanto. That was pretty crazy. But yeah, I eventually got into it, and just like you, Ian, I had somebody to play with. My cousin, we would constantly link battle and link trade as well. But that wasn't until Gen 2, like I had said, when I got a Game Boy Color.
Of course, Gen 2 made so many improvements and so many advances off the initial formula. It's kind of hard to go back to Gen 1.
Yeah, I don't know how I did it, honestly. But it was good.
Probably for the novelty of it all. It's like, look, this is back when Koga was just a gym leader and all that jazz.
Yeah. Well, I knew that stuff from the show, but it was interesting going back to play it. And actually, Team Rocket was still in Gold and Silver, so it wasn't like going back to a different team. True. Yeah, they were hand in hand, like a part 1 and part 2, I felt.
Now, have you followed the series as it's gone on? Have you jumped on every single generation, or you said you lapsed out at some point?
I lapsed out after Gen 2 because where I was at the time, or when I was at the time, Pokemon was becoming a not so popular thing where kids were making fun of you for liking it. And so I didn't not like it, but I was just kind of like in this limbo state where I wasn't really keeping up to it. Or keeping up to date with it. And then I found out about Gen 3 when Emerald came out, so I somehow skipped past Ruby and Sapphire, even though it's the same gen. And I was like, oh, there's a new gen. I might as well try this out. And I picked up Emerald, and then I just got back into it. So I wasn't out of it for too long. I kind of went out of it and back in between Gen 2 and 3. So, and then I've been on with it since then.
Your timing was perfect there because Emerald is basically the best of Ruby and Sapphire put all together. So you skipped out all the rough patches. You went straight on to all the good stuff.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but that was awesome.
So, of course, the biggest thing to do with Pokemon right now is the announcement of the next generation, Sun and Moon, and that small phone app that, a handful of people have been playing, Pokemon Go.
So much fun.
Yes, where you can go out and poke Pokemon Goes to your heart's content.
Oh, man. I missed out on a Vileplume last night because it ran away.
Oh, no.
I hate the running away function. If you're going to run away, at least still be on the map.
Well, see, Kyle and I, we're going to try to play it a bit before the show so that we could, talk about it all together as equals.
I actually did put in about 30 minutes into it last night. So.
I can't run it on my phone.
Oh, no.
What kind of phone?
It's a Galaxy S3.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a little dated.
It said, nope, you're not even going to try, son. We're not even going to let you download it. And it's like, all right, well, that's fine. I have other things to do. I don't need to play this like everyone else.
I'm a responsible adult. Oh, man.
How do you like it, Kyle? Now that you finally joined us, one of us, Pico Gobble.
Well, you act like I've never played Pokemon before. I did put in about an hour into Pokemon Blue way back in the day.
So you pretty much did play it.
That doesn't.
And I have, and I've watched playthroughs of it. I've seen what it's about. I know what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
But I am. It was all right as far as Pokemon Go is concerned. To me, there's not much depth to it, but I can understand like how you can get addicted to it, because even I was thinking like, man, if I just walked across the street and walk over there, I could get that Pokemon that I'm seeing over there. But check out the bushes that are rustling over there, because you can see leaves fly up on the map.
Interesting thing to note is that there's a glitch going on right now, and the nearby functionality doesn't work.
Really?
There's constantly 3 steps away, and the distance for each one is jumbled, so you really can't go by the nearby. So if you just started this 30 minutes ago, and this has been bugged for the past few days since Niantic updated the servers. And if anybody playing the game listening right now, I don't know when you're going to upload this, but you can't go by the nearby right now. It's just not working. So.
Okay. Well, I just ended up dropping some incense and having a bunch of Pokemon come to me. So I just ended up with a couple of EVs, and I think I started with Charmander, which I think that automatically just drops like right near where you are anyway, right when you start the game, because they're starters, obviously.
Yeah, you can choose to walk up to Squirtle, Charmander, or Bulbasaur, and if you run away from them, I think 3 times, eventually Pikachu will show up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, neither did I, so I started with Charmander.
Yeah,
yes!
Me too. Me too. Of the Pokemon designs that I'm familiar with, I'm going to say Charizard. Probably one of the coolest.
Yeah.
Although I do like me some Mudkip. I do.
It's not in this.
I know it's not. I know he's not in this, but I do like me some Mudkip. I like the monster designs. Pokemon designs are really cool. Most of them. Some of them are kind of dumb, but that's kind of how it goes.
Are there any that are really terrible enough to say this is a bad design, or are they all just like on a scale of awesome to it's okay?
I don't know.
The one that immediately springs to mind is Salamence.
He's okay.
Those flat paper wings are so stupid looking.
I know. I have some friends who absolutely love Salamence, so
I know. I'm in the minority here, but
yeah. I'm not too into Salamence either, actually. So
I was actually disappointed when they revealed Sylveon, the fairy type Eevee evolution, just because it doesn't look like it fits in theme with all the others.
You know, You're absolutely right, but it grew on me regardless. It's adorable.
It's cute and all, sure, but are those bows and ribbons on it flesh? Does it magically conjure clothing upon it? It's bigger than the other EVs. It's got a different head shape, different eye shape, different body shape. It's like they designed a mascot and said, okay, and now it's an evolution. It's like, no, it's not. Go back and think about what you've done, Game Freak.
For clothing and items, you could say that about most Pokemon, like Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee doesn't have pants. Hitmonchan and Machoke's
sure.
belt, and how the heck does Hypno automatically get a pendulum? You know, but
Sock
you're
and
right.
Throw are wearing gis at all times, sure.
Yeah.
But
they were born with them.
They never take them off. They never wash. This is the world of Pokemon.
Imagine if it was a part of their bodies, though.
See, that's kind of creepy, because then is it like fur or flesh or like skin flaps or
Have you seen the realistic artwork of Pokemon? And a lot of them are take that into consideration and redesign it. The only thing off the top of my head I could think of is Ghastly. It winds up actually being a bat that has like a mist around it. So it's like, yeah. So I would imagine them redesigning something where like the pants are just baggy skin or something. But it is strange because obviously it's meant to be clothing.
At the same time, I try not to take this too seriously because it's, colorful animal critters that fit into tiny magic balls, and you throw them at each other. So there's a degree of trying to rationalize it, and then there's a degree of just shut up and play the kids' game. Come on.
Yes. It's fun.
So how is your hype level for Sun and Moon?
Pretty hype. It's been getting progressively more hype. I can't identify it like on a scale of 1 to 10. It might be like an 8 or 9 building up to 10, just like ready to jump into it with every new thing I see. It's pretty cool.
I was gonna honestly give it a pass because I felt like
Really?
I kind of burned out on Pokemon until my wife was like, I think I'm gonna get it. You need to get the other version. I'm like, well, okay, I guess it's been decided then.
You got it decided for you. You have no say.
And then they started introducing the new stuff like the fire poison type, little salamander thing.
Salandit?
Yeah, and it's got the ability to poison steel and poison types. And it's like, oh, so you're actively messing with the metagame now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm on board. Sounds good.
Yeah.
And then they introduced that weird red panda-looking thing. It's a fighting something. Fighting.
We don't have its English name yet. Not that I know of.
Is it a fighting fairy type? I don't remember.
I want to say normal fighting.
Yeah, it's something weird like that. And it's like, I love the fact that it has this completely blank, placid face, but in canon it's supposed to be this ridiculously powerful fighting type. And it's like, is this the face of mercy?
I'm looking up right now. It's normal
that
fighting.
Will break you in half.
The strong arm Pokemon. Yeah, it's normal fighting. I'm looking it up on Cerebi.com right now. There's no English name yet. It's Japanese is Kiteruguma.
Yeah, that thing, whatever.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
And I really, really hope that they keep the EV training, not the critter, but the actual stat training from, what was the last one, X and Y?
Mm-hmm.
Because Kyle, I don't know how familiar you are with EV and IV training in your Pokemon.
I have heard the name Eevee, and I kind of understand. I kind of understand that it has some sort of mechanic with evolutions that makes it different from normal Pokemon or something. I don't know.
In a very basic overview, every Pokemon has randomized hidden stats. They're IVs, which are basically their genetics.
Okay.
Which provide a very small boost or debuff to all the various stats. And then the EVs, which are points that determine how much your stat growth is per level.
Okay, so not the Pokemon EV.
Not the Pokemon.
It's
the actual letters EV, which are
EV,
shorthand for effort value.
Right,
Okay.
It's individual value and effort value, I believe.
Yep.
Okay.
And in all the previous games, these stats were hidden, and I don't know who figured it out initially. But every Pokemon you fight comes with points towards some stat in EVs. So that if you really wanted to raise your Pokemon to a competitive level, you needed to go to certain regions and farm certain monsters, which is where the whole breeding angle became so big, so that you would get Pokemon with the right base stats, so that from there you could train them up so that they would be absolute monsters in certain builds. With X and Y, they introduced a kind of soccer field minigame where you could specifically train your Pokemon for these stat growths and actually see what you were doing with them, which took a huge burden off of the competitive field and actually got me kind of training competitively a little bit until I got tired of it. But the point is, they added a fun game mechanic to that, and I'm really, really hoping it'll show up in Sun and Moon again, because I thought that was a brilliant way of addressing a very grindy side of the game, but still making it fun and accessible to those of us who don't have the patience to do it legitimately.
Yes. There's actually I have a podcast as well that I'll talk about later on, but in that I brought up what I wanted to see in Sun and Moon was aside from continuing with the EV training minigame, I'd love to see some ability to edit the IVs, like maybe a breeding minigame or some sort of minigame where you can actively affect the IVs rather than it being completely random all the time. I'd like to see that metagame that top tier competition level be more easily accessible. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I feel like Kyle's not following.
Well, that's kind of one thing that I've always kind of admired about Pokemon is that it's at its core, it's this really cute, this kind of game where you go out and catch cute animals out in the wild and just make them fight each other. But at the same time, there's also this really deep meta game that you can really just dive really deep into if you're really into that.
Definitely.
So if you're not into it, you can kind of just ignore it and still get through the game. But if you want to be truly competitive, you can, easy to learn, difficult to master, that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I see that.
I'm on board with that. Also, it would be nice if there was some way to improve your odds of getting the abilities that you want on there. I've had friends who've gone through entire boxes of eggs trying to get a Protean Greninja, and it's always...
Oh, yeah.
Always something else.
Actually, there's a way... I think there's an item that swaps the ability. I think you get it from playing in the competitive end game things, though. And I think it's I forget what it's called. Some kind of vitamin or something, some medicine.
Right. Except the Battle Tower stuff cheats.
Oh, yeah.
Like, blatantly
it's
cheats.
It's not fair.
There was one
really
write-up I saw where somebody explained their setup, and the only way that they could lose the match would be if the computer landed a hit they were more likely to be struck by lightning while being stung by a bee and eaten by a shark than this move landing.
That's pretty likely. No, I'm just kidding.
And it landed, and they got wiped out, and they were... Salty did not begin to describe their level of impatience with it. But
the good thing about it, though, is you get battle points regardless. So you don't have to win in order to get the item. You can just keep playing to save up to get it. It's just, true. Battle tower is annoying in that regard. It's pretty unfair. Especially later on.
My tactical level. My tactic is, this is cool. I'm going to throw it at that thing.
Yeah. I want that to be my tactic, but it doesn't work.
Another thing that I've seen folks discussing is scalable difficulty within the game, which I can get behind because my usual tactic of play with what I think is cool gets you through the game no problem, but it's obviously built for, not 30-year-olds, but little children, so it gets a little tedious. It's too easy. But then the competitive scene is for people who really know what they're doing. That's way above my grade. So if there was a slider that, maybe bumped up the general difficulty, the AI used some minor tactics or something to engage the audience that's been with them for 20 years, that would be nice. I don't know how difficult that would be to implement.
I think a lot of that comes from the experience share, because the experience share now goes to the whole team, so everybody levels up. Which is cool for getting, leveling up your Pokemon and getting them to evolve faster. But the drawback is that it gets too easy because at some point you're just way above everybody else in level.
Well, I'm talking about stuff. Which was it? I think it was the remake of Gold and Silver, where you could go back and re-challenge the gym leaders. So instead of Brock using the 2 Geodudes and an Onix, he would actually have a full team of higher level, all rock-type Pokemon and actually would have a strategy in it. And you're like, oh, wait, he's actually a trainer. I have to think about this. So something like that, so that you could put a slider on so that when you're starting up the game, the little kids can start off with the basic, here's your 3 starters, handholdy, go through, and those of us who know what we're doing can go in and maybe that first gem leader doesn't have 2, but has a full 6.
That's a good idea, actually. I know there was that Origin anime that was only a few episodes long that kind of explained that the reason the earlier gym leaders are easier are because they go based on how many badges you have, so they lower their own difficulty. But from a playing standpoint, a kid playing and an adult playing, it's going to be easier for the adult, most likely.
So who are you going to start off with? Have you decided?
Yes, Poplio. It's
really?
Adorable. It's adorable. I went from hating it to loving it in less than a day. It's the weirdest thing. When I saw it, I was like, I am not starting with this thing. I hate it. And by the end of the day, I was like, you know what? This thing is pretty adorable. I'm going to go with Poplio. It was so weird. Oh, I can't describe it.
I'm still on the fence between Rowlet and Litten.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of hinges on what the evolutions look like.
You know, I saw, now this is probably completely fake and made up, but I saw a list of names for what the gen is going to have. And I don't want to say, I would, obviously take this with a drop of salt, but some of the names were really creative. Like Rowlet would evolve into something called Bow and Owl. I was like, that's so cool. Like bow and arrow. There's so many puns. There's so many puns in this list of names. I think Salandit, since it's Salamander and Bandit, evolves into something called Thievicious. So it's like a thief and vicious. I was like, that's awesome. And I think my favorite evolution chain in that list of names was Surf Pup. Evolving into High Tido and Bark Kahuna. I was like, that's amazing. This is amazing. I want this to be real.
And just because they're that much fun, I can pretty much guarantee they are fan-made, but still.
Oh, yes, but they're so creative nonetheless. Oh, man. Like the one of the name, that ghost thing that's disguised as a Pikachu. We don't know its English name yet, but I'm assuming it was the one on the list. It was called Ikachu, like E-E-K, like Eek, and evolved into something called Ryghoul. I'm like, these are so awesome.
I would also accept Peekaboo.
Yeah, that would make sense too. But the name Mimikyu kind of sounds like it's trying to mimic you, like mimic you.
Yeah.
So I could imagine them fooling around with that and just fixing up the spelling so it's less Japanesey, or however you would describe Japanese like.
It's interesting to see which ones get a full English translation and which ones stick to the Japanese. Like, going back to Generation 1, something Kyle might be a little more familiar with, Gyarados. The big blue sea dragon looking thing.
Yeah.
The proposed English name for that was Skullkraken.
Ooh. That's cool.
That would have been
That
cool.
would have been amazing. But for some reason, they kept with Gyarados. Perhaps Skullkraken was too violent? I don't know. But you've got stuff like the little electric squirrel, Pachirisu. That doesn't immediately roll off the tongue in English, but it's not too cumbersome.
I think what they're doing is every Pikachu-esque Pokemon, they seem to have this fad of keeping their Japanese names.
Well, were Plusle and Minun the same in Japanese?
I don't know. That's a good question.
And I'm pretty sure Emolga got a different name.
Maybe you're
then
right.
We've got this little electric steel hedgehoggy thing. I can't pronounce it. I don't know what it is.
Togedemaru or Togedemaru. It's either Togedemaru or Togedemaru or Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know.
We'll go with that one.
Yeah,
as cumbersome as the name is, and the fact that it's yet another Pikachu clone.
Yes,
the fact that it's a electric steel type, but it comes with, is it Ferroseed's steel barb ability?
Iron barbs and lightning rod.
There we go.
I only know this information because I have Cerebi open on my computer. I don't know this offhand. I'm not that good.
But that's what's got me hyped about this game. Or the one thing that's got me the most interested is it really feels like they're trying to play with the metagame.
Mm-hmm.
Because for so many generations, it's like, here's this type, here's how you know you're going to build your team. Oh, look, last generation is still the best team to go with, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And with this one, it really feels like they're messing around with the formula. And I don't know if it's going to lead to a completely revolutionized metagame, or if it's just going to be a hot mess and who knows what's going to come out of it, or if any of these new things are going to be viable at all. But the fact that it feels like they're trying to inject something new into this series is really refreshing.
Yes, definitely. I got this list open on my phone right now, and I just wanted to add in this other trio that could potentially, but probably not going to be the case, as we established. Cutiefly, evolving into Hugabug, evolving into Don't Botherby. How awesome is that? Don't Botherby. Oh, man.
Delightful.
Oh, so good. Whoever came up with this list assuming that it's most likely fake. So good. There's another duo called No More and No Less. Like, what? This list is so good. I saw another one that was like Tiki Tiki and Temboss. I'm like, oh my god. This is so good. I want it to be real.
That, and speaking of, what we wish to be real, the level of creativity amongst the fans creating fake mon is absolutely staggering. There's one I've seen of a proposed water grass type that starts off as a tadpole with the tail kind of a leaf shape. And then evolves into this tree frog, but with its legs all long and spindly lily pad feet type of thing. And it looked like a legitimate design. It's like, I would catch that. I would put that on my team. Why is that not real?
Because you didn't create it. Can you imagine if Game Freak contacted? This is just a general question. If Game Freak contacted you and asked you, or you, Kyle, or me, just in general, what Pokemon would you create? What do you think you would go with?
Oh, the list.
And this is not my fan question, so don't take that from me.
No,
we're in the Pokemon discussion realm here.
I can imagine later. Good. Just and we would answer this fan question, but we already answered it before. No.
I'm going to limit myself to 3. These are the first 3 that come to mind, and this is over 20 years of just thinking on the topic. One would be a water type that starts off as a little fawn and turn into this big, awesome deer with coral-like antlers that spew water everywhere. And the thing would be called reindeer.
Nice and simple. Oh, that's punny.
Or have a little, grass-flying chickadee thing that turns into a peacock with a big frondy back tail thing.
What would its name be?
I have no idea. And just as a pure special glass cannon, some kind of fire electric bird that more or less evolves into various forms of fireworks in the process of exploding.
Zaptress?
Yes, something like that. not legendary and easy to catch. And one of those things that would you kind of send out for one turn, do a lot of damage, and then it would get smacked with anything and be gone.
What kind of Pokemon would you make?
I designed a long time ago, probably not too long ago, but I designed something like a cartoony version of the Alien from the Alien series, and I don't know if it would have 2 or 3 forms, but I fooled around with the name Baby and Alien and went with something like a Babe Alien, and then later on something fooling around with Battle and Alien, and something like a battalion. But as far as typing and stuff, I don't know. I don't know. But I always wanted a fire and water. Or no, they just did that. Fire and ice, actually, be cool. But I can't see that matching with the Pokemon I designed. I don't know, man, but I would love to be able to make my own Pokemon. How about you, Kyle?
I don't know, actually. I am not super well versed in Pokemon designs particularly, so I don't know entirely what's out there. I know some of the more popular ones, obviously, but there's how many of the things at this point? Over 700, 800 of them? Or more?
721 plus.
Okay, yeah.
Or
I kind of figured it was around there. And I don't know. Are there any Pokemon that are shaped like musical instruments? I know there's some really weird. What's that?
There's a parrot. I'm ashamed of myself for forgetting its name, but there's a parrot shaped as a musical note.
Okay. I was just thinking of something shaped like like a guitar or something. That'd be kind of cool. Or stupid. I'm going to go with both.
I wanted to point out that you can tell Ian's the writer because he knew everything about his Pokemon except for the design. And you can tell I'm the artist because I knew the design of my Pokemon, but nothing else. You can tell a lot about a person from their Pokemon.
Yeah.
So that's enough geeking out about Pokemon for probably the next year or two. Not going to stop us, but for now, we're going to move on to the Q&A. But before we do that, our guest star is going to get the first crack at the first question for the
That's
Q&A.
me. All right. So my question is going to be based on something that I think I've bugged you specifically, Ian, about, and I hope to God I didn't bug you, but specifically something about the chronology of the now what is now the origins of the Sonic comic. I had been working with some people on the Bumble King comic forums to create this giant chronology list I'm sure you're familiar with. And I was curious while reading Mega Drive and while reading the comics now with all the footnotes with the past games. I'm sure you have a specific order in your head, but seeing the Sonic to the 8-bit adaptation where it had the prototype Silver Sonic, which confirmed recently that Sonic 2 on Genesis took place before it, so Sonic encountered the prototype before the final one. Do you have like a definitive chronological order for at least the first few batch of games?
I do. Just to be clear, in it, Sonic faced Silver Sonic on the Death Egg first, and then fought the prototype later.
Right.
And that's not because things are out of order, it's because Eggman didn't have anything else to use.
That's what I figured.
There is a set order in my mind for the most part, and I really want to be able to put out an official list at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But I have discovered that it may be better to wait on doing that because when we were producing Mega Drive, well, before I get to that, let me say, I was going to try to include Tails Doll and Metal Knuckles in the mix, just because they're cool. I like them as an extended villain roster. But I wasn't really going to treat Sonic R as any kind of canon, same way as Sonic the Fighter's got kind of its own special loose adaptation. So when we were producing Mega Drive, one of the notes we got back from Sega of Japan was that Sonic R was canon. Which is why Metal Sonic is showing up in what would technically be before Sonic 4. So I'm going, okay, well then.
That doesn't make sense.
So, as I'm learning new things as we go ahead, and as, internal policies shift or change, which is way, way above my head, it impacts how I'm going to be constructing this timeline for the comic series. Now, we don't have to be 100% beholden to the game chronology, because we obviously aren't doing that already.
Right.
Unleashed was a very, very loose adaptation and used more as a staging device than an actual true-to-form adaptation. But in the basic order of events, I don't want to set anything in stone just yet, but you can pretty much count everything Genesis era and Mega Drive styled as the past. And right now, as of this recording, I'm treating Sonic 4 as kind of the bridging point where things move on into the modern style. I know there's some talk of where Sonic 4 actually falls in terms of the modern chronology, but that's so loose as it is, I don't feel like I'm really stepping on anybody's toes there. So that's subject to change. We'll see how it goes. But there is a set game plan. Oh, the plans I have.
So then where would you say that Sonic 4 falls in relation to the other games?
It falls, and again, this is subject to change, but right now Sonic 4 falls after the classic era and at the start of the modern era.
Okay.
So consider Sonic 4 the precursor to Sonic Adventure 2, blah, 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 blah.
So,
if we were to be very hardcore on the game material, technically speaking, Sonic Advance 3 should come before everything else, which doesn't make any sense. So,
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, because I was keeping track of this list in the timeline, which is actually continuing on the ArchieSonicOnline.com. So I have it open in front of me. In terms of the games, based on what seems to have been confirmed in the book so far, it seems that 288 to 291, and correct me if I'm wrong, is going to retell the first adventure. Then we have Sonic 2 on Genesis, followed by the 8-bit adaptation, immediately followed by the Tail Sky Patrol adaptation. Then it seems to lead into Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and then Sonic CD, and then Mega Drive and Mega Drive the Next Level. Does that sound about right?
I'd have to sit down and actually look at the notes myself. That doesn't sound wrong, but something else to keep in mind is that the classic era is much more free-flowing in terms of events. Mm-hmm. Some are very directly, one leads into the other, specifically Sonic 1 into Sonic 2.
Yeah.
But overall, I'm treating the classic era as more of an era of adventure and exploration, where one thing doesn't necessarily have to directly tie into another. Okay. It wasn't really until Sonic Adventure that we really had this continuous storyline as one thing led into another. And that's more or less how I'm treating the modern era and the current timeline with the comics. The current stories will all interconnect and lead forward fairly linearly, but the early era stuff, while there is definitely a timeline, it's not necessarily a straight line. It's kind of meandery. It's kind of things go where they go.
Right. Well, then I guess to wrap that up, if Sonic 4 is kind of the bridge between classic and modern, then how would you explain Metal Sonic being in the series before that if he was stuck on Little Planet?
Yeah, he winds up on Little Planet again somehow.
Oh, okay.
So maybe Little Planet comes back in between now and then. Maybe he gets lodged on a rocket. Maybe he falls through a Generous's hole. Who knows? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We may not even get to that, because in the end, what does it really matter? Because we know Metal Sonic winds up there. We know he gets off. It's the nerd in me wants to dot every I and cross every T.
Oh, yes.
But in terms of what do we really need to tell story-wise, that's kind of on the wayside. The backlog of stories I want to tell in Sonic Universe is getting ridiculous.
See, the nerd in me wants to document it because I'm also the admin at the Sonic Online Encyclopedia, archiesonic.wikia.com. And I just want to edit the articles and be like, all right, so this happened first and this happened first. Because as of right now, everything is like, well, these events happened in some order. So the nerd in me is like, I must document this exactly how it should be.
And believe me, I would love nothing more than to just word of God it right here and now. But there's hoops I have to jump through, and I want to make sure that I don't undercut myself later on.
What is this? What is this? The Zelda timeline?
Oh, that's a discussion for quite another time.
Yes, indeed.
That's another show entirely.
I have a lot to say on that, and if the listeners like it or want it, and you guys deem it okay, I would love to give you guys some money to be on the show again.
We will not refuse that.
Nope.
Sounds good.
But moving on, we're going to hit up some priority Q&A.
But first, how do you ask your questions, Ian?
Usually with my mouth.
Oh, ho, ho. No, I'm usually the mouth. You're the one. Well, you answer them, so you use your mouth to do that, but I'm the one who asks. Anyway, never mind. Anyway, go ahead.
Hypothetically speaking, if I were to ask a question to the BumbleKast, I would either comment on Twitter with the hashtag BumbleKast, send it to BumbleKast@yahoo.com, or become a patron of the patreon.com/BumbleKast and ask it in the comment sections.
Yes. You can do all those things and more? No, not more. Not anymore. First up, we've got the Patreon priority Q&A. First up, we've got one from Mike B. Judging by how much you're building up Meropis with the new Chaotix arc, I can assume that the Freedom Fighters, aside from the ones that have already been there, might be visiting in possible future arcs, storylines, etc. My question to you is, how reluctant do you think they would be having to visit a magical underwater city?
For the most part, not really reluctant at all. Meropis has been a city on the world for a while now, and they just kind of fell out of the public eye. and how they are trying to get back in the public eye and the world stage is part of the subplot revolving around that. And we'll touch upon that in the Chaotix arc. But it isn't so much a magical city as it's a location. It's someplace you can go and leave freely. So they have ways of having land dwellers come visit, and if they come down to Meropis, they will be accommodated. So I can imagine, Sonic isn't thrilled just because water. And Antoine, being Antoine, would be a little antsy about going down to the crushing depths where possibly there are things that would eat someone who cannot swim. But otherwise, I figure everyone would be pretty much fine with it.
Antoine can't swim?
No, I figure he can swim. It's just, There's always that nagging doubt of what if he forgets how to breathe properly, or what if there's an undertow, or what if something, seaweed gets tangled around the legs. There are so many things that can go wrong in the ocean!
This is true. He makes a good point. Meanwhile, Sonic's just like, I can't swim. I literally can't. For some reason, Sonic can never swim. It's weird. Why can't Sonic swim? Other than because Sega said so.
I don't know. And I love the fact that they address it in the Mario and Sonic Olympic Games by putting a swim vest on him.
Yeah.
He doesn't really swim, he just kind of flails.
He just floats and flails. Yeah, that's pretty great.
I am really curious about the cut item from Sonic 1. It was supposed to be a pair of snorkel goggles.
Right, yeah, the goggles.
And I wonder if it would have worked like the bubble shield, or if it would have diminished the drag underwater, or how would it have worked? What would it have done for you? I want to know.
All I can imagine is that it was just something where you could just breathe underwater forever, which seems kind of weird because there was no diving tank involved, so he's just breathing water. But whatever.
Well, he's also, eating bubbles to breathe. It doesn't really make sense.
He's also a weirdly shaped blue hedgehog that doesn't look like an actual hedgehog at all, and wears red and white shoes, and stands on two legs, and
runs at Mach 1. So
yeah.
Believability's kind of gone out the window a while now.
I guess. Whatever. Hey, Sonic 1 was still believable, dang it. Everything else after that, it just went crazy. No, Sonic 1 wasn't believable. All right, next question comes from FancyFool. I'm curious as to how different species breeding works post-reboot. Is it the same as pre-reboot, where Mobians of different species have twins, with each twin being the same species and gender as their respective parent, and rarely produce a single child that has one parent species but a notable trait to the other? Or has that changed in at least some ways?
I don't want to get into that just yet. Simply because we really haven't had a scenario where we've had a mixed species relationship resulting in a kid. You can argue that there's something of there between King Acorn and Sally. You can argue, what will Antoine and Bunny's kids look like? But for now, we don't have any kids running around like that. So I don't really want to dig into it just yet. Part of the reason why I established those rules pre-reboot was because there weren't any rules. It was whatever anyone had there, and I tried to make sense of what little consistency there was. Now that we don't have to address it just yet, I'd rather leave it alone, because as sure as I say, oh, it's going to be this way, Sega's going to come around and say, oh yeah, Vanilla married a tiger at some point. It's like, well, how does Cream make sense then? So, I don't know.
Uh-oh.
I'm very wary of doing anything that could very easily be in conflict with the Sega canon. Because we saw what happened when you had to tap around that in the old continuity, and I'd rather avoid it where we can in the new continuity.
Don't read into that too much. Cream's dad is not a tiger.
This is not some secret insider info. This is just, random.
Yeah, this is This is an
Walrus,
example.
Dragon, octopus, it doesn't matter, whatever.
Yeah. This is an example. All right. Are we ready for some standard Q&A, Ian?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
I am questionably ready.
Well, good, because there's questions involved.
Exactly. Our first one comes from Aaron Tumilty. When Sonic Lost World is adapted in the comics, will the things that weren't explained in the game be explained in the comics? Examples: the Lost Hex's history, how Eggman conquered the deadly sticks, how he found the cacophonic conch, how he found its uses, and etc., I suppose.
The what?
Cacophonic conch? Is that what it's called?
Cacophonous conch.
Cacophonous, I don't know these words. That's what it's... It is written cacophonic conch. I don't know how to pronounce conch because I am not from the ocean. I don't know what an ocean is. I live in the Arizona deserts. I don't know what water is.
Okay. Okay, we're good. We're good.
Are you sure? Are you sure we're good? Are you sure we're good? Okay. I don't know. That's what it said.
Before I cacophonously conk out.
It's con. Is okay? Is CONCH? Is that correct spelling?
Yeah, that's how you spell conch.
Okay. Well, why is it pronounced conch?
I don't know.
Why isn't it spelled conch? Why isn't it said conch? I've never said it out loud. So I don't know.
Well, you know what a conch shell is, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
But I don't know how to say it.
Apparently not.
No.
All
right. Well. Now I feel embarrassed. So let's continue.
No, educated.
I feel I've learned something while you have laughed at me.
I think we all don't want to get into too much detail of how we'll be addressing Lost World in the comic because that's still somewhat up in the air. We did touch upon it with the Halloween special, which is supposed to be canon to the game in terms of where it falls story-wise. And as for how Eggman took over the Deadly Six, that's already been fairly well detailed in the game. He has the cacophonous conch. It creates a sound that completely debilitates the Zeddy. That's how he won. In terms of Lost Texas history, this kind of falls back into the whole species thing. If Sega has an idea of what they want to do with Lost Hex, I don't want to introduce something that's going to contradict it down the line. And in terms of how he gets the conch, in terms of the comic, we've already started to lay breadcrumbs about how that will be. Folks who have read Eggman's Dozen should have a pretty good idea of where it's going to come from, at least as far as the comics are concerned.
So basically, what you're saying is, hang on to your conches. All will be revealed in time. Great, I have killed Ian. He's officially done.
Hang on to your conches.
Oh man, I'll probably never live this down either.
Oh lordy. Next question.
All right, from QuantamEdge, what's been your favorite film of this year?
Oh goodness, I suppose Captain America 3: Civil War.
Yep.
I went to it very nervous because of all the things that could go wrong, and they did it all right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are a number of films that I want to see that I have not gotten to see, so that may change, but of the films that I did actually go out and watch, that one is the top of the list.
Right. Of the films I've seen so far, I'd have to agree with you. Deadpool runs a close second. And that's about it. I think that's about all I've seen this year. I think I have seen a couple others. X-Men Apocalypse was not my favorite film of the year. I'll say that. Next question is from Croubo. Are there any seldom seen character interactions among the Freedom Fighters that you're interested in tackling sometime after the Shattered World?
What I'd really like to do is mix them up a bit more. Mm-hmm. We've kind of got pairings and groupings that are very familiar, and folks know what to expect from them. So what I want to do is visit more and different interactions. I don't want to get into too much detail just yet because that starts to tread the line into what I have for long-term plans, but I definitely want to see different interactions between the team members, ones that we don't necessarily always see hanging out together.
Yeah, of course. You want to mix it up a bit. I think that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to it. And finally, from Spin. Do the time stones function the same way as they did in old canon? Such as when Silver used the yellow one to do chrono control to travel back in time? Or have the Chaos Emeralds become the ultimate Deus Ex Machina, like in Sonic 06?
I would imagine that the time stones largely work the same, simply because I was basing their power off of the games. And it looks pretty clear, at least in the bad ending cinema from Sonic CD, that you can use a time stone to travel back in time. Whether or not we'll trot out the term Chronos Control again, I don't know. Whether or not we'll actually be able to play with the time stones again, I don't know. What would be interesting would be to see which is more effective and how their powers match up or don't match up concerning the time stones versus a double Chaos Control. But that's a whole thing I would have to investigate in its own right. That's not something I can just answer off the top of my head.
It would be cool to see time stones versus Chaos Emeralds.
I mean, on the one hand, it seems like anyone can use a time stone, but they're really hard to come by. Whereas double Chaos Control can be used by anyone who's got a couple of Chaos Emeralds, but you also have to know Chaos Control, so that limits you down to 3 characters.
Right. I think it could be interesting. See you play with it.
I don't know, maybe we'll do some giant, crazy time travel storyline, because that's what everyone loves, right? My giant, sweeping story arcs. Yeah.
I'm down with that. I like time travel stories. Sure, I mean, you can poke holes in pretty much all of them, but whatever. They're fun. I
like James Cameron's approach in that set the rules for your story and abide by them.
Right. I think so that's one reason.
That's not how time travel works. It's how it works in this story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why Back to the Future works fairly well. I mean, you can sit there and poke holes in it, especially once you start getting into part 2 and 3, but I think it still works for the most part.
All right, that just about wraps it up. Before we call an end to the show, we're going to have our end of show shout-outs here, and we're going to let Andrew lead us off. Andrew, anything you want to push or promote or talk about before we sign off for the night?
Yes, I would like to. The simple and short answer would hopefully be, check out the links below. But the more, the actual way to do it. You could check out my artwork at, my main website is just about wrapping up, so you could check out my artwork at drewmaru.deviantart.com, which is DREWMARU. Oddly enough, isn't Diamond Death. And, let's see. My Instagram is Drew Maru Comics. There's an underscore between Drew Maru and Comics. Same as my Twitter. I believe my Tumblr is Drew Maru. You could check out my comic, that Ian has done some work on, called Spirit Legends. You could check that out on Facebook, at facebook.com/spiritlegends, which has a link to the issues that you could download for free, or if you want to support the team working on it, you can buy printed copies on demand. And what else? I have a podcast called GG Gaming, which is going on and off on hiatus because people keep dropping off, unfortunately, but I seem to have somebody new to help with that, and I think that pretty much wraps it up. I don't think I really have anything else to say.
That's good enough for me. You can pick up on everything I'm doing at bumbleking.com. That's Bumble like the bee, King like the reigning monarch. Or find me at Twitter at IanFlynnBKC.
Or you can follow me at KyleJCRB on Twitter. Check out kngi.org for all the KNGI network goodness going on, if you're looking for more podcasts to listen to. And you can find me streaming live every Saturday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time over on 8bitx.com, your source for video game music awesomeness.
We're going to wrap up the show with a shout out to all the patrons that continue to make this show so wonderfully possible. Thank you all so much for your continued support.
You're welcome.
I'm going to give a shout out to Alex P. S. Yardovich 9X. I always mess that up. Connell T. Justin G. Samuel P. Daniel L. FancyFool, Mike B. and Daniel H. And of course, the Diamond Death himself, Andrew D.
It's AKA Drew Maru. I don't know why I have 2 different usernames. P.S. there's a link to the trailer that Ian had worked on for My Spirit Legend Comics on BumbleKing.com, I believe. Did you link to the trailer, or you just said you were?
I'm fairly sure I linked to the trailer, or at least to your website, but it came together rather well. So
yes, it did.
That'll look see.
Nice.
It's mixed in with some older art and newer art, so please bear some of the older artwork. But yeah, Ian, you did a fantastic job with that trailer.
Thank you, sir. That's going to wrap it up for BumbleKast episode number 22. We will see you in 2 weeks for BumbleKast episode 23. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Poke out.
Pika.
Bumble King.
There you go. That's your Pokemon right there.
Bumble King.
Hey, thanks for listening to the BumbleKast. If you like the show, be sure to hit that subscribe button and consider supporting us on Patreon. We have some great rewards, as well as big plans to make the show even better. Also, rate and review the show on iTunes. It gets more folks listening and really helps us out, so we definitely appreciate it. Original music by Ken Coda Snyder, used with permission. Find more of his music at bc.s3m.us and find the theme song at noisechanradio.bandcamp.com. Available as a pay-what-you-want download.